Hello and welcome to the Milky Way Mumble. I'm your host, Lactea. Yes, not showing my face is intentional. So let's just get right into it. Voice training is really difficult. If you're a trans person, this is something that you may choose to do as part of your transition. For many of us, it's important that our voice matches the person we're becoming. And when you get to that point, even for just a second, where your voice matches what you want it to be, or very close to it, it could be very euphoric. But the process of getting there is something that can be nothing short of a nightmare. I first started voice training by just recording myself reading Wikipedia pages in my closet. I would force my pitch up really high, and the point was just to see how long I could sustain that pitched voice. Now, I always loved reading stuff aloud, like since I was a kid and growing up. I think for the most part, I generally grasp information better if I read it aloud. And it could also be kind of just comforting. I don't know. A self-soothing sort of thing. Well, kinda. Because after a while, the recording Wikipedia articles method wasn't really working for me. And I kind of just put my voice training on hold for a while. A bit after that, I ventured into the voice training YouTube. Where there are many creators that try different ways of explaining how to think of your vocal tract in order to change your voice. And I don't think I'm alone in saying that no matter how many of those you watch, it's really difficult to grasp. Because for many people, it's not really something they have to think about. Their voice is just their voice. Unless you're in a field that requires voice training, like in acting or singing, it's not really something you're taught to be aware of, all the little different muscles and stuff. So trying to internalize and really grasp what muscles you have to move and what to contract, what to avoid doing. If you try to do it, you don't even know if you're doing it right. And because they involve moving muscles and stuff that you're not used to moving, trying to hold that for any sustained period of time at first is really fatiguing. It's really tiring. So obviously it gets really discouraging. It wasn't until I started doing this channel and doing audio role plays that I actually started noticing some changes after a while. Now, if for whatever reason you're watching this and you don't know what an audio role play is, an audio role play is a form of storytelling. It's the person recording, which is called the speaker, is taking on the role of a character in such a way where the person listening, the listener, feels like they're part of the conversation in some way. That character, the speaker character, can be a whole character with background and lore, or it can just be the role of a general friend or partner. I think audio role plays really took off during the pandemic when people were forced to isolate. So people needed a source of comfort that was easily accessible. I personally was listening to them for years before. Actually, thinking about it, a lot of the first role plays I watched were they were all in Japanese, in Japanese only, because it was the sort of thing where an anime girl talks to you sort of thing. I was a kind of a weeb back then. Often audio role plays get thrown into the same field as ASMR. In some ways, people think of them as interchangeable. And I think that's because the ASMR tag is just so much more prevalent and people know exactly what that is. To the point where an audio roleplay that's posted isn't necessarily ASMR per se, but that's a whole other topic for another time. I think the reason why audio roleplays, doing those and posting those somewhat consistently, why those worked for me is because audio roleplays aren't just about reading a script. You're meant to take on the role of a character, role play, and you're meant to sound like you're in a conversation. So you're learning to add those improvised little breaths and sighs and giggles that you would add that isn't necessarily written down. Sometimes they are. Sometimes it's explicitly written, but sometimes you're just allowed to improvise that. Audio role plays help not just being a vehicle for practicing your target voice, which is the voice that you want to achieve or the range of voices that you want to achieve, but it helps with expression and being comfortable in your target voice. When you read an article on Wikipedia, it's all very prose, very informative. So the tone is it's meant to be very neutral. But in an audio role play, like, you're allowed to be expressive and like go, "Ah." You can also do like many different kinds of voices depending on the character. So it's something that like lets you explore different voices that like might just be fun at first, but might have like little elements to it that actually help add to your like target voice. Like, you try all these different voices and you just pick like little bits of what you like from each of them and like add it to your like collective like main voice, if that makes sense. Like after a while of doing it, I realized like as I was recording, I just like really got into it, and like just being the character was super fun, and trying to add these like inflections and tones and stuff like I couldn't do that before. It's wild because I remember doing like my first audios, and I remember putting my all into being expressive, or like a good amount into like trying to make it sound like a genuine conversation. But like after a year, I listened back to those audios and realized that like my voice is still very timid. It wasn't at all as like expressive as I thought I was, which for me meant that like I had definitely progressed. It was tangible evidence that I had changed my voice in a way that is now like fundamentally part of me now. And yes, I said a year. Like, no matter what way you practice, I think this is something that takes time. And I think that can be hard to accept for a lot of people. I mean, including myself. Like, after trying it a little bit the first time, I kind of just put it on hold for a while, because it is hard to have people see you stumble and practice and try. Now, I've also noticed that this method, although has helped a lot, is not perfect. And here's why. While you're definitely like practicing your voice, it's often in a very controlled environment. You're often recording alone, so you're not actually like talking to someone. And so the same like social cues that happen when you're actually talking to someone aren't there. And like after the fact, you're allowed to like edit your voice and cut out the parts that like were mistakes, or where you didn't get the voice just right, but like you did multiple attempts, and the best attempt you're able to keep in the final project. And also another thing is that like you're practicing being a character. Oftentimes this means like mimicking a character that you would see on a television show or something. And so you end up being very dramatic with that. Like I don't go, uwaa, or in real life, But because that's the environment you practice your voice in, it's hard to then like go to like your IRL person voice and maintain where like the progress you had. And so the best way to get better at speaking your target voice IRL is by talking with people IRL, or at least having a live conversation with someone, but preferably IRL. Now, hear me out, because this might sound pretty obvious, but I think this is something that I've noticed about like when I'm most comfortable using my preferred like target voice. I'm comfortable using my target voice with people I am most comfortable with. This is different from people I am most familiar with. For example, my parents, I grew up with them. So in a way, like they're the most familiar people that I know. But even attempting to use my target voice around them is like super difficult. Not just because of the language barrier that I have with them, like they speak Spanish, I can kind of speak Spanish, but because it feels like I'm performing in front of them. Like they knew how my voice has sounded from the beginning of time. So so then suddenly going up to them and like having a high voice, hi mom sort of thing, it's just like I'm being a character in front of them, and they know that, and I don't like that. This also goes with friends that I've known for quite a while, where like they've known how my voice sounded before, and while I'm more comfortable with them, it still feels a little disingenuous when, especially if like I've been too shy to practice in front of them. Like suddenly like going out of my way to practice in front of them, especially now that I have like this like cartoony voice, is like kind of weird. It brings me to a big question about being trans and performing and being yourself and all that. Like, how do you relax and be yourself when something as fundamental to our person as our voice, is something that a lot of us feel like we need to practice. Because often when people struggle making friends and putting yourself out there, which I think a lot of us who are online probably do, the first line of advice is often just be yourself, right? But I think this is why it can be so hard for trans people to like make themselves so visible on the internet, let alone like IRL. Because it feels like as a trans person, like everything from your looks to your voice is something that both defies societal expectation, but is also trying to like mold into it. Like, what is yourself? Like, is yourself like you not really putting any effort into how you present yourself? Well, that sounds like you're not taking care of yourself. But it also, you don't want to like keep like an act all the time, because that could be really exhausting and really tiring. So it's a messy middle ground, right? Now, as an artist also, something very similar is going on with art, where it feels like you never want to put out your art. A lot of this stuff lives on your hard drive because you feel like it's not ready yet. For example, I have a lot of songs that I have in my hard drive that are like, the instrumentals are done. It just needs the vocals. I never feel fully ready to record vocals when I feel like, oh, in 5 months, my voice will be like a little bit better. So why not wait till then? 5 months pass and my voice is not where I want it to be, or not where I thought it would be. So then I'm like, well, okay, let me wait another 5 months, and so on and so forth. Like, there's this need to be like fully complete in order to just put your first foot like through the door, whether that be a metaphorical door, like publishing your art, or a physical door, like actually physically going outside and meeting people. Now, I follow a lot of like what I think used to be called self-help, but now that's become, I think people don't like that term anymore, but it's like, self-betterment. I don't know how to explain it. A kind of trend that's going on with these sort of videos is like doing things badly. Like, failing is learning, like internalizing that. Like, it's okay to do art that isn't perfect. Like, actually do things bad, please. The idea is that like embracing your cringe or mistakes or just your untrained enthusiasm, like that's the foundation of not just growing as an artist, but also a person. Especially nowadays, if you're constantly in online spaces, because oftentimes those spaces are where you feel most accepted. You're being bombarded with like curated, polished content that can be grueling to compare yourself to. It feels like you have to be perfect and stand out from like day one if you want to put your art or your voice into the world at all. I personally struggle with this as someone who's scarily closer to 30 than I would like to be, and who has tried a variety of like different projects and labels and stuff. And it feels like I'm running out of time to find my calling, as if I'm running out of time to be new at something and try new things, which, like, when you put it like that, sounds like silly bullshit. So tying it back to audio roleplays and this channel as a whole, it has fulfilled a creative question that I've had for a while that is part of this struggle that I've had. How do I integrate all my different interests in one space? For a long time, I considered myself a musician, and music was like my main sort of art form. I did that for like 5 or 6 years before I realized that I wanted to do something more like conversational, but I didn't know that quite yet. I just knew I wanted to like put my voice out there and talk about stuff. Today, I like to think of myself as a storyteller. That's sort of like the main label that I personally would use on myself, whether that's through music or making audios or this podcast. But I'm always a little hesitant to like say that a lot because a storyteller feels like that label to me holds a lot of weight to it. So it can be kind of intimidating to like say that, yes, I am a storyteller. Storytelling is something like that's both ancient and timeless. Like, it's always been with us and will always be with us. So if you're a storyteller, like, the stories you tell better be fucking good, right? But then I think about my first audio roleplay that I did and realized that I was being a storyteller then and there. I was using someone else's script, but I was doing my part to bring that story to life. And I did that recording knowing it was my first one and that my voice wasn't the best, but I was excited to do it from the beginning. And this channel like has really blossomed in ways that I've always kind of dreamed about before. Now I largely write my own scripts. I get to work with other amazing creators, creating stuff that feels so involved and exciting and like has a lot of like little moving parts. And I get to improve my voice while doing it. I think something that ties everything together here is that I have to remind myself that success is never just around the corner. Like, you have to be a little delusional. I think that's another thing I hear a lot. You have to be a little delusional when it comes to success. Like, you have to believe that you're worth the success and that you're going to do like things that seem unattainable now. But you have to remember that success is not around the corner. And it's one of those things that like, it's like the outdated like frog in a pot analogy, where you don't realize how far you've gone until you take a step back and look around you and you're like, wow, like I've done quite a bit of stuff and I still feel in the midst of it. Like I'm not at all like complete or fully ready ever. But I still do it. So as with art and voice training and just being a better person, it takes time, but you will have these milestones that tell you, hey, you did a thing and you've been doing that thing for a while. Big ups. If you made it this far, I'd like to thank you very much. And this is the part where I'll explain kind of what this podcast is going to be, because I kind of just went right into the topic at first. So what is the Milky Way Mumble? It's a podcast about creativity, culture, and my own journey as both an artist and a human being. It's something I've wanted to do for a while. You know, in other past like channels and projects, I've attempted to do similar things, but again, I just wasn't ready. But now it is time, even though I never feel fully ready, as I've said before. Because this is a new project, I'm gonna set like a little goal first, and I'm committing to 5 episodes of this like pilot season of the Milky Way Mumble and seeing how I feel about the process. Ideally, it's something you can put on to fall asleep to or while you're doing your own creative hobbies. I kind of want this to like spark a conversation about creativity and how like art and stuff really reflects like how we grow as people. I've also just wanted to talk about like culture in general, like things around us, like food or games or writing or stuff like that. You know, the patterns we see in those things and how those things affect us too. Now, I've listened to like a number of podcasts, but The Wild Geese, by a podcast by Anna Howard, has been a big inspiration for like this particular kind of podcast. I think her podcast kind of explains why I think the term self-help is kind of outdated, because self-help implies that you can fix yourself in isolation. Whereas, as far as I understand, like a lot of her message is that like working collectively and sharing ideas and bringing ideas and finding connections, especially those from other people, like is the key to like bettering yourself. Also, her podcasts just feel like more cozy and not as like broadcasty as like a lot of other podcasts, but it's still very like professional and very aesthetic, and I just really like that podcast. I intended this to be more of like an unscripted thing, but time and time again it becomes clear that I just need a script in order to give anything I do justice. Ideally, going forward, I'll have a podcast episode one week and an audio role play the other week. But life has been a bit on the rough side recently for no particular reason, so I'll make things as I'm able, but I will commit to the 5 episodes of this podcast. If you have anything you want to share about what we talked about today, or any ideas of what you maybe like to see, even just little like 1-sentence ideas of what you like to see in a future episode, comment below, like, subscribe, do all the funny things. It's funny because I never actually like say that out loud ever on my channel, but please, like, share. and stay tuned for more mumbles from me, Villa Lactea. I'll see you next time. Bye bye, bye bye, bye bye.